Hi, everybody. Happy holidays and welcome back to Storytime with Grandma Kate. Today we're going to be starting another Junie B. Jones book. Of course, it's a holiday one. It's called Junie B. Jones, Jingle Bells, Batman Smells, P.S. So Does May. And I never really talk about Junie B. Jones's orneriness specifically at the beginning of a book, but she does some things that a lot of kids might think or do, and a lot of it's not appropriate, and we know that. I mean, we all have a little Junie B. Jones in us sometimes. But what I love about these books is that even though she can be a little ornery or naughty, she's always learning something. Like in the Thanksgiving book, she learned that she didn't have to like May or even be friends with her to know that they have something in common. And that's true. We don't have to like everybody in the world, but I do think that it's important for us to learn how to get along with people. And I'll bet you that's what's going to happen in this book called Junie B. Jones, Jingle Bells, Batman Smells, P.S. So Does May. So we're going to start this one today. We're going to be reading chapters 1, 2, and 3 in this video. So if it gets to be a little bit long, just hit pause and come back when you're ready. I'll put all the videos in a playlist. So if you want to listen to the whole book at one time, you can, or you can just take it in little chapters at a time. So chapter 1 is called Peace and Goodwill. Here's a picture of Junie B. sitting at her desk. Remember, she always starts her first grade books with a journal entry. She's got little candy canes all around her desk. I love that. This is on Tuesday. It says, Dear First Grade Journal, yay, yay, hooray. Today is the last week before winter break. Winter break is the school word for I gotta get out of this place, I tell you, because Blabbermouth May is driving me crazy. She is tattletaling on me every day almost. That's how come yesterday I chased her down the playground and I threw grass on her head. Oops. It was very fun, except I hope Santa did not see me do that. That guy watches me like a hawk this year. From Junie B, first grader. P.S. Wait, hey, I almost forgot. Today, all of the first grades are going to sing holiday songs together. That will be a hoot, I tell you, because just then I quick stopped writing because I couldn't believe my eyeballs. That Snoopy head May was stretching her neck across the aisle and she was reading my journal page. I slammed my book shut speedy fast. That is none of your beeswax, sister, I said. But May was already jumping out of her chair. Mr. Scary, she hollered real loud. Junie Jones wrote a bad name about me in her journal. She wrote that I am a bladdermouth, and a bladder is not a nice word. I rolled my eyes at that dumb comment. It's not bladdermouth, it's blabbermouth, May, I said. Blabbermouth is spelled with B's, not D's. Mr. Scary stood up at his desk. Girls, please, he said. Then he was going to growl at us probably, but the phone rang from the office and he had to answer it. I crossed my arms at May. B is the same letter that you always forget when you say my name, remember? And so maybe I should use B in a sentence for you. I leaned close to her eardrum. Dear Blabbermouth May, my name is Junie B. Jones. How come you can't remember B's? Huh, May, huh? Are you a blockhead or something? May's face got very puffery. And then all of a sudden, she grabbed my journal right off my desk and she started to rip out the page. Those two girls do not get along. I used to have girls that would fight like that in my classroom. It was tough because they're so different. Their personalities are so different, but it's never right to call somebody a name. And it is not right what May is doing either. She should not have taken Junie B's journal and ripped out a page. It's terrible. I tried to grab it back from her, but May would not let go of that thing. And so me and her got into a tuggle. I pulled real hard, and then May pulled harder, and then oomp, I pulled and pulled with all my might, and me and my journal went flying right back to my seat. I hugged my book all safe and sound, but something did not feel right. I looked down. During the tuggle, May's sweater sleeve accidentally got hooked on my thumb. And so, oh no, her sleeve got stretched across the aisle with me. I quick untangled it from my thumb, but the sleeve did not bounce back. Instead, it just stayed on my lap real longish and droopish. I did a gulp at that thing. And then very slow, I looked over at May. And kaboom, her whole stack blew off. She exploded out of her seat and she hollered at the top of her lungs, Mr. Scary, Junie Jones wrecked my sweater sleeve. Junie Jones wrecked my sweater sleeve. Mr. Scary hung up the phone. I quick wadded up May's sleeve and I tried to give it back to her, but she would not even take it. And so the sweater sleeve unrolled itself on the floor. May's eyeballs popped right out of her head. Ah, oh, it's all over the floor, she yelled. It's ruined, my sweater is ruined. I tapped my fingers, very thinking. Well, the whole sweater isn't ruined, actually. It's just that one sleeve, May, I said, kind of quiet. If you grow one arm to the ground, it will fit like a glove, probably. May opened her mouth to holler again, but Mr. Scary was already hurrying down our row. He did not say a word to us. Instead, he took May and me by our hands, and he rushed us to the hall. May's sweater sleeve dragged on the floor behind her. She picked it up real limp. Look at this. Just look at it, Mr. Scary, she grouched. Junie Jones wrecked my sweater. Junie Jones wrecks everything. I did a mad breath. I do not wreck everything, I said. And anyway, this wasn't even my fault. You're the one who started it, May. You're the one who stole my journal. Mr. Scary looked down at me. Stole, he said. The word is stole, Junie B, not stolded. I sucked in my cheeks, 'cause now was not the time for grammar. Fine, she stole my journal, I said. She just grabbed it right off my desk and she tried to rip a page out. May kept on arguing. But I only took her journal because she wrote a bad name about me, she said. I stamped my foot. But May wouldn't even know about that name if she didn't snoop, I said. Snooping in someone's journal is an invasion of their privacy. Mr. Scary did a little frown. Privacy, he said. It's an invasion of privacy, Junie B, not piracy. I threw my head back. For the love of Pete, can't you just let it go? I'm trying to make a point here, I said. Mr. Scary glared his eyes. He said for me to calm myself down, young lady. I jumped all the way in the air. I am calm, I hollered back. After that, I got marched speedy quick to the water fountain, and I had to drink some sips of water and settle myself. I drank and settled, and then I wiped off my mouth and I rocked back and forth on my feet, kind of nervous. Sorry, I said real quiet. Sorry I got mad, Mr. Scary. I looked up at him. Sometimes grammar makes my head explode, I said. Mr. Scary smiled a bit. Then he took me back to May, and he talked to us in a calm voice. I really don't understand your behavior lately, he said. Girls, the holidays are the time of year when we try to spread peace and goodwill, but you two are treating each other worse and worse every day. Me and May quick pointed at each other. It's her fault, we shouted together. Mr. Scary shook his head. I don't care whose fault it is, he said. If you two have another fight today, there will be no holiday sing-along for either of you. Instead, you'll be parking yourselves in the principal's office for the afternoon. My body did a shiver at those words, because I've parked it at principal's before, that's why, and there's not a lot of singing that goes on down there. So what's it gonna be, girls? Said my teacher. Do you want to shake hands and make up, or do you want to spend the afternoon in the office? My eyes glanced over at May. She was standing still as a statue, and her eyes were staring at the floor. I waited and waited for her to shake hands with me, but she did not look up. Finally, Mr. Scary tapped his annoyed foot at us. Well, he said again. I waited some more, but May still did not budge herself. That's how come I did a big loud breath, and I picked up May's long sweater sleeve and I gave it a shake. There, fine, I shaked with her, I said. Shook, said Mr. Scary. Whatever, I said. Then I dropped the sleeve back on the floor and I kicked it over to May with my foot. She did a gasp. Ah! Then she quick picked it up and swatted the dirt off of my pants. Hey, quit it, I yelled. Mr. Scary snapped his loud fingers at us. May stopped swatting. I was just getting the dust out, she said. Mr. Scary filled his cheeks up with air and he let it out real slow. And then he took us by our hands again and we walked back to room 1. Peace and goodwill do not come easy. Boy, isn't that the truth? Even grown-ups sometimes fight like that, don't they? Sometimes you got to take a time out and take a breath, take a break. I don't know. Let's see what happens next. We're going to read chapter 2 called Jingle Hats. The rest of the morning, we did arithmetic. Arithmetic is the school word for adding and taking away. Only I couldn't even concentrate on my numbers that good, on account of May kept giving me mean looks and flopping her sweater sleeve around. Pretty soon, there was a knock on the door. Come in, please, said room 1. Mr. Scary taught us to say that. Only I don't actually know why, because people come in anyway. The door opened very slow, and it was Mr. Toot, the music teacher. He was carrying a big brown box in his arms. It was dusty, I think, because when Mr. Toot plopped the box on the floor, Sheldon started to sneeze his head off. Sheldon is very allergic to dust particles, and also he is allergic to hoagies and dairy products and nature. Achoo, 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 achoo. Mr. Scary looked at him real panicked. Then he quick picked up a tissue box and he rushed to Sheldon's desk. But Sheldon was already wiping his nose on his shirt sleeve. I beat you again, Mr. Scary, he said. I beat you at that race every time I sneeze. Mr. Scary closed his eyes. I have told you before, Sheldon, we are not racing, he said. Sheldon laughed. Then he threw his fists in the air and he shouted, Sheldon Potts rules. Mr. Scary rolled his eyes and then he moved the dusty box farther away from Sheldon's desk. And Mr. Toot lifted the lid. I stood up to look and wowie, wow, wow, guess what was in there? Elf's clothes, that's what. There were little green elf hats with jingle bells on their ends, plus also there were cute elf vests with belts. Mr. Toot held them up for us to see. Kind of like maybe what she's wearing on the cover here. What do you think? I'll bet so. I bet that's what they look like. Boys and girls, our PTO made these costumes several years ago for our holiday sing-alongs, he said. Aren't they great? Every single first grader is going to get to wear one today. The PTO is the parent-teacher organization. So a lot of parents and teachers got together and made the costumes. He started passing them out. My Richie friend Lucille got hers first. She looked at it and made a face. Okay, number 1, I don't wear this shade of green. And number 2, I don't wear bell hats, she said. Mr. Scary looked up at the ceiling, and then he took Lucille by the hand and he walked her back out into the hall. And she came back wearing a bell hat. Pretty soon, all of the rest of room 1 were wearing bell hats too. And we shook our heads. And there they all are wearing their bell hats. There's Junie B over here. I'll bet you that's Lucille right there because she doesn't look real happy to wear a bell hat. I would wear a bell hat. The bells jangled very jingly. Hey, the room sounds just like a jingle bell sleigh, I said. Mr. Toot did a chuckle. You're right, Junie B. Every year, one lucky class gets to wear the jingle bell hats, And this year, because room 1 has been so well behaved in music class, I chose you." All of the children clapped and cheered, except not Lucille. Instead, she threw her hands in the air and shouted, "What are the odds?" After that, she flopped her head on her desk and she didn't come up again. Mr. Toot ignored her. "And that's not all my good news either," he said, "because each year the class with the bell hats goes on stage and they lead the whole auditorium in singing Jingle Bells." Room 1 jumped up from our seats. Jingle bells, yay, yay, we're going to lead Jingle Bells." Mr. Toot smiled. "Okay, everyone, just to make sure that you know the words, we are going to have a short rehearsal," he said. "Rehearsal," we shouted. "Yay, yay, rehearsal." Only too bad for us, because rehearsal was nothing to shout about. We sang that dumb song a jillion times, I bet. At first, it was kind of fun, only then it got real boring. And so that's how come I started singing funny, different words. I can only imagine what her different words are. They were funny words about Batman and Robin. I sang them loud so my friends could hear. This is a song I used to sing when I was a kid. Maybe you know the words. Jingle bells, Batman smells, Robin laid an egg. Batmobile lost his wheel and the Joker got away. Hey! Herbert and Lenny laughed and laughed. May did a gasp, and she sprang up like a sprig and she started to tattle. Mr. Toot, Junie Jones is singing the wrong." I quick yanked her skirt. "Psst, May, are you crazy?" I whispered. "You and I can't fight anymore, remember that? If you tattletale on me, we'll be parking ourselves at Principal's." May covered her mouth with her hands, and she sat down real fast. "Oops, never mind," she said to Mr. Toot. I wiped my worried forehead. "Whew, that was a close one," I said. "I saved our gooses." May leaned across the aisle. "You did not save our gooses, Junie Jones," she said. "I saved our gooses. I'm the one who didn't tattle." She pointed her finger at me. "But you better not sing those bad words at the sing-along," she said. "I mean it, Junie Jones. If you sing those bad words on stage, I will tattle on you, no matter what." I did a big breath. "Robin laid an egg is not bad words, May," I said. "An egg is nothing for a bird to be ashamed of." "I don't care. It doesn't matter," she said. "You already ruined enough today, Junie Jones. You ruined my sweater and you ruined my mood, but you're not going to ruin the sing-along too." She crossed her arms at me. "Even if I get in trouble myself, I will still tell on you," she said. "You can count on that, Junie Jones." After that, she leaned back in her chair and she brushed her hands together real smuggy. And I looked at that girl. May is off her rocker, I believe. She kind of went like this. That's May. Do you know what off her rocker means? If May is off her rocker, that means she's a little cuckoo. And I think May is. Kids who tattle a lot, I never really understood tattling because I would not tattle. I'd see kids doing bad stuff in my class. I was always very good at school. I was naughty at home, but I was very good at school. And I never really understood tattling because I didn't want the attention on me when I told. So do you guys tattle, or do you know anybody who tattles? If you could explain to me why people tattle. I don't get it. Maybe people like seeing other people in trouble, but not my thing. Anyway, we're going to finish this video with chapter 3 called Laughing All the Way. We went to the sing-along after lunch, and the auditorium looked like Santa's workshop. There were a jillion cute elves in that place. And wait till you hear this. Room 1 got to sit in the very first row. I sat in the seat right next to my friend Herbert. This sing-along is going to be fun, right, Herb? Right? This sing-along is going to be the time of our life. Just then, May plopped down in the seat on the other side of me. I stopped smiling. "That seat is saved, May," I told her. "I'm saving it for someone else." She looked all around. "For who?" she asked. "For someone not you, that's who," I said. May did not budge herself. "You can't make me move, Junie Jones. This seat is public property." she said. She scooted closer to me. I'm going to stick to you like glue. It's the only way to make you behave yourself today. I showed her my teeth, and I made a "rrr" noise. May did not look fearful. Here's a picture. Let me move it over here so you can see it a little better. There we go. There's Junie going, "rrr." Finally, I moved closer to Herb and I pretended she was invisible. That was smart for Junie B to do that, I think, just to ignore her. Pretty soon, the sing-along got started. Mr. Toot said to turn to page 1 in our holiday songbook. The first song was the 12 Days of Christmas. It is about a guy who gives his girlfriend a bunch of stupid presents. I tapped on her real curious. What would you do with 10 lords a-leaping, do you think? I asked. He thought for a minute. I'd take them back and get store credit, he said. I nodded. That Herb has all the answers. I was 10 lords a-leaping. I was in a play once with a bunch of teachers, and we acted out the 12 days of Christmas, and I was 10 lords a-leaping. I jumped over my friend Mrs. Weiss in that play. That was quite fun. After that, we sang Frosty the Snowman and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Winter Wonderland. Finally, Mr. Toot stood up at his piano, and he said it was time for Jingle Bells. Room 1 hurried to the stage. It was very thrilling, except for May kept on sticking to me like glue. She stepped on my heels going up the steps, and she crowded in real close to me, and she whispered in my ear. I will be listening to you, Junie Jones, she said. I will be hearing every word you sing. I smiled just to myself, because I had a surprise up my arm, that's why. Pretty soon, Mr. Toot raised his hands to start the song. I stood up straight and tall, and then I took a deep breath, and I sang the words out loud and clear. Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh, o'er the fields we go, laughing all the way, ha, 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 bells on bobtail ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song tonight. My eyes glanced over at May. Her face looked disappointed almost. I smiled. Then I took another breath and I sang the chorus right in her ear. Oh, jingle bells, Batman smells, P.S. so does May. I'd throw May right off the sleigh and then I'd drive away. Hey, yelled May. That's not funny, but it is funny. It's naughty, isn't it? It's not appropriate, but it is funny. If Junie B. Jones was my child, she'd have a consequence for that, though. I yelled at that. I laughed at that funny comment because, hey, fit right into the song. Room 1 sang the chorus again, but I was laughing too hard to sing. It was the joke of my life, I tell you. Only too bad for me, because as soon as we got back to the room, May tattletaled her head off. It was not good. Mr. Scary called us up to his desk, and he said he is very disappointed in both of us. Only unfortunately, there is not enough time to send us to the office. I started to relax a teensy bit, only just then the bad news came. Because what do you know? Mr. Scary said there was exactly enough time for him to write a note to our parents. We're going to stop right there. In our next video, we'll start with chapter 4 called Going Last. That's probably what I would do. What Mr. Scary did to write a note home to May and Junie B's parents is what I probably would do. I probably would get on the phone actually and have them call their parents and tell them what happened. But we'll find out. This is going to be an interesting story, I think, for Christmas time. I think sometimes it's hard during the holidays to behave as well as we would like sometimes, because it can be, we're just waiting for Christmas to come, or we're tired, or whatever reason. I don't know. I think people get on our nerves a little bit more. Papa and I take a lot of time in the evening to relax and to read books and play with our pets and go for walks in the woods. We actually went for a walk last night in the snow. So I hope you are having a wonderful holiday season. Have a great day, and I'll see you at our next story time.